All right, so we're diving deep today into the world of corporate boards. More specifically, what it takes to be a really effective first-time board member. You sent us this article about executive board education, and I think it's so relevant. It's called Why Executive Board Education is Crucial for First-Time Board Members by Armayo Ibrahim, published on Lidafi. So maybe you listening are thinking about joining a board someday. Or maybe you just want to understand this kind of like high-stakes world better. Either way, get ready for some like aha moments. Are you ready to unpack this with me?
Absolutely. Effective boards are really critical for any company's success. We're going to discover how new members can truly shine.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one. So the article starts off with a statistic that just really grabbed my attention. It says that a 2017 survey by Heidrick and Struggles and George Mason University found that like 50%, half of nonprofit board members felt unprepared for their roles. And the reason was a lack of proper orientation or education. That's a pretty big red flag, isn't it?
It is. And while that survey focused on nonprofits, I think it shines a light on a problem that extends to the corporate world as well.
Right.
It's easy to assume that seasoned executives would transition seamlessly onto a board. But the reality is that board membership requires a very specific set of skills, even beyond executive experience.
Okay, so it's not just about business acumen. What are some of those specialized skills that are so critical?
Well, think about it this way. You could be a fantastic pilot, but without specialized training, you wouldn't be prepared to fly a fighter jet, right? It's a whole different ballgame.
Right.
Similarly, board members need a deep understanding of governance, legal duties, risk management, things that aren't always emphasized in traditional executive roles.
That makes a lot of sense. And the article uses the Enron scandal as a case study to highlight this point, right?
Exactly. Enron had a board that was packed with experienced executives, but they lacked the specific financial literacy that was needed to see the warning signs and to prevent the disaster that unfolded.
And the consequences were huge. It wasn't just about the company going under, but, investors lost billions of dollars. Thousands of people lost their jobs. It shook public trust in the entire energy sector.
Absolutely. And that brings us to Boardsi, the company featured in the article. They're trying to address this knowledge gap with their executive board education suite.
Okay, so tell me more about Boardsi in this program. It's not just a few workshops on corporate governance, is it? What makes it so unique?
It's way more comprehensive than traditional board training. Boardsi takes a holistic approach, covering everything from education on those core boardroom skills to branding support, profile development, all to help connect potential board members with the right opportunities.
Interesting. So they're not just teaching the textbook stuff, they're helping people navigate the whole ecosystem of board recruitment.
Precisely. And when it comes to the educational component, they cover what I consider the 5 pillars of effective board membership: corporate governance, financial literacy, strategic planning, risk management, and leadership.
Okay, I get why the first 4 are important. But leadership, I wouldn't necessarily think of that as a key skill for a board member.
It's more crucial than you might think. Remember, board members aren't just there to rubber stamp decisions. They need to actively participate, influence strategy, and even challenge the CEO when necessary. That requires a really nuanced understanding of leadership dynamics, especially within the context of a boardroom.
I see what you mean. So Boardsi helps develop those hard skills. But what about the softer side of things? Like, how do board meetings actually work? Do they teach you how to navigate those dynamics?
That's another key component of their program. They delve into the intricacies of board dynamics, exploring things like the relationship between the board and executives, the flow of decision-making processes, and how to contribute effectively in a board setting. It's all about bridging that gap between theory and practice.
So it's like getting a behind-the-scenes look at the boardroom before you even step foot in one. I'm starting to see how this kind of preparation could really boost a new board member's confidence and effectiveness.
Exactly. And speaking of confidence, there's another aspect of Boardsi's program that I find really interesting. They recognize that learning isn't a solo endeavor, so they actually help facilitate connections between aspiring board members, current board members, and industry experts.
It's like they're creating a whole network, a community of support. In the world of boards who can be just as important as what you know.
That's true. And Boardsi doesn't just throw people together and hope for the best. They curate those connections. They provide opportunities for meaningful mentorship and knowledge sharing.
That's smart. So they cover those essential boardroom skills. They delve into the dynamics of how boards work, and they help you build those all-important connections. Is there anything else that sets their program apart?
Well, they also recognize that learning by doing is so valuable. So they incorporate simulations and case studies into their training, giving participants a chance to apply their knowledge in a safe environment before facing the high stakes of a real boardroom.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
Like a flight simulator, but for board members. You can practice your skills, make mistakes, learn from them, without any real-world consequences.
Exactly. That kind of practical experience can be so impactful. More than just reading about theories in a textbook, it builds confidence, helps you refine your decision-making abilities, and gives you a taste of what it's really like to be a contributing member of a board.
Okay, I have to admit, I'm pretty impressed with this Boardsi program so far. But the world of business is constantly changing. How do they ensure that their members are staying up to date with the latest trends and regulations?
That's a great question. It's something Boardsi takes very seriously. They provide ongoing updates to their members, keeping them informed about regulatory changes, industry trends, best practices, all the things that can impact a board's decisions. They're committed to continuous learning, not just a one-and-done training program.
So it's like having a continuous feed of essential knowledge, ensuring you're always up to speed and ready to contribute effectively. I'm sensing a theme here. Boardsi seems to be all about empowering their members to be the best they can be.
You're absolutely right. They understand that well-prepared board members lead to stronger companies, better governance, and ultimately a more robust economy. It's a win-win for everyone involved.
I love that perspective. It's not just about individual success. It's about raising the bar for corporate leadership as a whole.
Exactly. Before we move on, I want to circle back to that statistic that we mentioned earlier. The 50% of nonprofit board members who felt unprepared. It's a sobering reminder that even in the nonprofit world, board education is crucial.
It is. So, listener, if you're involved with a nonprofit or
Yeah.
thinking about joining a board in that sector, don't underestimate the importance of getting the right training and support. It's just as vital as in the for-profit world.
Couldn't agree more. Whether you're aiming for a board seat at a Fortune 500 company or a local charity, effective board leadership requires preparation, dedication, and a commitment to ongoing learning.
Well said. Now, we've covered a lot of ground here, but there's one more piece of the puzzle I want to explore. The article mentions certifications and credentials offered by Boardsi. Do you think those qualifications can give someone an edge in the competitive world of board recruitment? We'll be right back after a quick break to dive into that. Okay, so we're back. And I'm curious to hear more about these certifications and credentials from Boardsi. Is it kind of like a gold star that says, hey, this person's ready for a board?
That's a great way to put it. In a field of candidates, that can be pretty crowded. Having that extra validation can really help you stand out. To a recruiter or nominating committee,
Yeah, it's kind of like having a degree from a top university. It doesn't guarantee you'll get the job,
Yeah.
but it makes your resume stand out.
exactly. And beyond just looking good on paper, completing a program like Boardsi's, which is so rigorous. It shows a real commitment to professional development. It signals to potential boards that you understand the responsibilities
Yeah.
and the complexities of board membership.
So it's not just about checking a box. It's about a deeper level of knowledge and dedication. Do you think that can impact a candidate's confidence when they're being interviewed?
Absolutely. When you've really mastered the material
Huh.
and you've earned a recognized credential, it gives you a sense of authority
Hmm.
and credibility. And that can really shine through, especially in those high-pressure situations.
I can see how that would make a difference. You're not just talking about your skills. You're backing it up with something real. But even with all the training and credentials in the world, there's always going to be a learning curve when you join a board. How does Boardsi prepare people for that?
Well, remember how we talked about their focus on practical experience? That's really where the simulations and case studies come into play. They put people through realistic scenarios, challenging them to use what they've learned in a dynamic environment.
So it's not just memorizing facts and figures.
Hmm.
It's about developing critical thinking skills and navigating boardroom discussions.
Exactly. And by going through these challenges in a simulated setting, participants can figure out their strengths and weaknesses, they can refine how they make decisions, and they build the confidence they need to be effective when they join a real board.
I imagine that can also be helpful for networking, building relationships with other potential board members. It's one thing to meet people at a conference or a cocktail party. It's another thing to go through a challenging experience together.
You're right. These shared experiences can create a feeling of camaraderie and community, which is so valuable. Especially in the world of corporate boards, you're building a network of peers who understand the challenges, and can offer support and insight.
It sounds like Boardsi has really thought of everything to prepare people for success as board members, both the hard skills and the connections. But let's think about the bigger picture for a second. Why should companies care about board education? Is it just a perk for their executives? Or is there a business case to be made?
It's more than a perk. There's this growing idea that board education isn't just good for individual executives, it's good for the entire company. When you've got a board that's informed, engaged, and equipped to ask the right questions, you get better decisions, stronger governance, and ultimately improved financial performance.
So mitigating risk, enhancing oversight, and ensuring that the board is doing what it should for the shareholders.
That's right. And a highly effective board can also be really helpful for things like strategic planning, innovation, navigating challenges in a world that changes so quickly.
A board that's stuck in the past isn't going to help.
Exactly. And that's where we're seeing a shift. Board education isn't optional anymore. It's necessary for success.
So we've talked about the benefits for executives, the benefits for companies, and the broader impact. But what about someone listening who's thinking, this is all interesting, but I'm not ready to be on a board yet? Is any of this relevant to them?
Definitely. Even if you're not looking for a board position now, a lot of the skills we've been talking about are helpful for any leadership role. Think about strategic thinking, financial literacy, risk management. Those are essential for any leader.
Good point. So this kind of professional development could really help you, even in your current role.
I agree. It's about expanding your skill set, broadening your perspective, becoming a better leader.
Now, before we finish up, I want to ask one more question. We've explored the benefits of this kind of training for individuals, but do you think companies have a responsibility to encourage their executives to get this education? Should they be proactively investing in this?
That's an interesting question. You know, traditionally, professional development has been on the individual, but when it comes to board readiness, companies have a real interest in making sure their people are ready.
It makes sense. You wouldn't send a sales team out without training.
Right. And it shows their employees that they value leadership, that they're committed to growth, and that they see board service as a path for advancement.
So everyone wins.
Exactly. And I think we're seeing more companies realize this. They're incorporating board education into how they develop talent. Some even offer financial help, or they partner with groups like Boardsi to create custom programs.
So it sounds like the corporate world is realizing that this is a smart investment.
Absolutely. And as that awareness grows, we'll have more effective boards, which leads to stronger companies, better governance, and a better economy.
That's great. Thanks for all your insights today.
It's been my pleasure. I love talking about this.
And listener, we want to hear from you. What stood out to you? What are your thoughts on this? Share your ideas on our website or social media.
We love hearing from you.
And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to think about. We've discussed the importance of education for board members. But what about the other side of that? What makes a great board member? Is it all knowledge and skills? Or are there other things? Think about it.
That's a great question. Maybe we'll explore that more later.
Until next time, keep learning. So we're back, and before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you said earlier about board education being a shared responsibility between individuals and the companies. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, professional development has been seen as an individual thing, but when it comes to being ready for a board, companies really benefit from having their people ready.
Right. It makes sense. It's like you wouldn't just send a sales team out there without any training.
Exactly. And it shows the employees that the company values leadership, they're committed to growth, and that serving on a board is a good career move.
So it's a win-win.
Yeah. And I think more companies are realizing this. They're including board education in their development plans. Some even help pay for it. Or they work with groups like Boardsi to make special programs.
So companies are starting to see that this is a good investment.
Definitely. And as that happens, we'll have better boards, stronger companies, better governance, and a better economy.
That's fantastic. You know, I've learned so much today. Thanks for talking with me and our listeners.
It's been great. I really like talking about this topic.
And to everyone listening, we want to hear from you. What did you find interesting? Let us know on our website or social media.
We always love hearing from you.
As we finish up today, I want to leave you with a final thought. We've talked about board education. But what about the other side of that? What makes a great board member? Is it just knowledge? Or are there other things too? Something to think about.
It's a great question.
Until next time,
Yeah.
keep learning.